Well, welcome. The beginning of the silly season, when the people who are unique in Milford, the people who don't just say, we should be better, we should make things better, but turn around and say, I'm willing to work, I'm willing to volunteer my time and make things better. So I tip my hat to all the people involved on all the different committees. But the most important committee, and everybody will say select board. No, nothing against the select board. You're looking at a candidate to control 7 hours a day of your child's life. And that's always amazing because as they get, anybody who's had kids that go through high school, you're fighting to get an hour or two of their attention. And yet the people on the school committee dictate what happens for 7 hours a day. So tonight we'll start with our candidate. Let's have an introduction.
Yeah, my name is Brendan Rickert, running for school committee. I've been a resident in Milford for a little over 5 years now. 3 years ago was the first time I ran for school committee. It wasn't well known in town, but I learned so much, knocking on doors, making phone calls, introducing myself to people. I really got a chance to introduce myself to the town. And, unfortunately, I did not win the seat that time around. But I immediately jumped into being more involved in town. So I filled out the form to be part of other committees. So I'm on the youth commission and as many things as I can get my hands into. So that's why I'm running again. So I'm looking forward to the
Yeah, but you
process.
did incredibly well
Thank you.
your first time out. You know, you've been in Milford, what, 2 years?
2 years, yeah.
And to see how many votes you got,
Yeah.
that was really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I joked around afterwards. I said, I don't even know if I know this many people outside of Milford in general. So it was flattering. I really appreciated the process. And, the message I took from it was Milford thought there was some potential there with me, but they wanted to learn a little bit more about me. So I took that message to heart and ran with it.
So here we are, round two.
Here we are, round two.
Now you've added a Milfordian.
We did. We just welcomed our daughter, Josephine, Josie. She's a little over 2 months old now. She's the best thing in the world, so we have a little bit more skin in the game this time around.
Now, there's nothing better than having a daughter.
No.
I know people yell at me and say, son's just as good. Yes, but I got 2 daughters.
Sure.
And this may sound sexist, and I apologize, but daughters take care of their fathers. No
I hope
matter
so.
what.
Yeah.
I remember when the wars began between mother and daughter, Dad was always left off to the side. They always just tolerated me. I mean, to this day, well, I don't see my oldest as much as I'd like. I see her 4 days a week.
Sure.
But 4 days a week, she lives a mile and a half away. Now she's given us 2 grandkids, which rival the wonders of having children, because you get to give them back for a while.
You do. You get all the benefits and
you get to laugh when
Sure.
My daughter and I keep having these disagreements on carbo loading. She tells me it's not a good thing to carbo load my grandson. And I tell her I've not seen any bad side of it. We go to Dairy Queen, which is a mile from her house, load him up on ice cream and French fries. Before the carbo titer hits, I've already driven him home,
Yep.
and I'm in my little bed a mile away.
That's not a bad way to do things. Yeah.
So, okay, down to business.
Sure.
Brendan, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Yeah, Al, I think it's pretty simple. As I mentioned before, having the experience of running the first time around, I got to learn the process, got to learn the roles of the school committee, connect with the school committee members, connect with the teachers, the administrators of the schools, and with the town. Since that experience, I've continued that process of being involved in and outside of the schools. And, I feel like over the last 3 years, I've learned a lot about what goes into this position, the responsibilities that come with it. And I feel like I'm more prepared and qualified for this role now.
What brought you to Milford? I mean, some of us,
Yeah.
my parents my grandfather, they were here.
Yeah.
So I was born in Milford. I was here. But you made a conscious decision to come to Milford.
Yeah, there's a couple things. The simplest one would be to say that there was a bike trail and I'm a runner, so I'm like, this is a perfect place to train. In reality, Milford reminds me of my hometown. So I grew up in Connecticut, Danbury, Connecticut. My high school had 54 different languages spoken in it. So I'm accustomed to diversity. Milford fits that profile of a working class city, a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different talents and cultures. And this was kind of a good fit for me. I felt right at home immediately, and that's a testament to the people that have grown up here, like yourselves, and have also moved here and made it their home. So we kind of hit the ground running.
If you were to look at the three biggest challenges that you would expect to face as a school committee member, what would they be?
I think the number one is the high school. It's everyone's talking about it. It's a $200 million question mark that we have, maybe a little bit more, hopefully a little bit less. The second one, I think is right in line with it, just space in general. We're adding more, or we just added some more apartments online. It's going to create more students in the system, so that's going to mean more physical space, more teachers, and more resources to serve those students. And then I think the third one is the economy has changed drastically, even 3 years ago from when I ran. There's a lot more work from home. During the pandemic, more people started their own businesses, and they're all different, and a lot of them are internet-based now. So how do we build an education around a newer economy that's not necessarily focused on going to college, but rather what people can do within their communities? And I think that's a huge challenge as a school committee member would have to face to help shape that curriculum and more importantly, the activities within the schools to allow students to find what works best for them, whether it's college or non-college track.
Let's expand on that, because that's been a pet peeve of mine
Sure.
for many decades. We take care of our academic kids pretty well.
Great.
And
Absolutely.
we'll talk more about that later, but I don't see the same level of opportunity being made. I think of my father.
Mhm.
Now, he grew up in Portugal in the mountains, had his 4 years of school,
Sure.
and after 4 years, he had to get out and earn to help the family.
Right.
If you put my dad in an organic chemistry class, wouldn't do well.
No.
Not an academician. But give that man a tool. He was an artist.
Yeah.
There was no tool I've ever seen that he didn't master. And what I worry about is we have BVT.
Mm-hmm.
We had a program when I grew up.
Yep.
That if you were going to college, you went to Milford High.
Yep.
If you were going into the trades, you went to BVT.
Sure.
But now my understanding, and I love what Dr. Mike has done with the results.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You can't fault him with the level of proficiency his students graduate with. But I worry that people like my father, he couldn't make it into BVT because he wouldn't be in the top 10, 20% of the academic class.
Too competitive. Yeah. Yeah.
So what do we do for them?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question, if you will, and I think that involves different resources. One of the things that I've done since becoming chair of the Youth Commission, we have a scholarship every year, $500 scholarship, one for boys and one for girls, and the scholarship was really meant for academics, for kids going on to college, and this year we changed it to a grant. And for any high school senior to apply for this grant, whether they want to get into photography and they want to use the $500 to purchase a camera. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Twitch. You might be pretty soon with your grandkids. But Twitch is like a video streaming service, and it's literally watching people play video games as a part of it. That's a real job, and people actually make real money from this. So the economy has totally changed. So I wanted that scholarship to be changed to a grant where someone who has an ability to, whether it's working with their hands, be creative, they need some higher price technology to operate a business, whatever it might be, or even a college kid to be able to apply that money towards their books or tuition, basically opening it up to say, we want to support you in whatever future endeavor you want to go to. And I think it's little things like that we have to change. With the new high school, we have a chance to reshape how that building operates, having maybe a little bit of a BVT light that we can steal from them when we reshape that building. So there's lots of options. And then obviously in Massachusetts, you have the biomedical field, which is massive and still growing somehow. Everyone was like, it's not, at some point it's going to slow down. It's not. I mean, Kendall Square is still building up big buildings, and they're moving outside into the suburbs now too. And there's a big need for non-degrees to work in those trades. I mean, there's engineering one,
bio-operators.
Absolutely, people just even pipetting. So the world has changed greatly, and we need to adapt to that as school committee members.
We just put in a $500,000 investment into the C Wing.
Yes. Yep.
For promoting biotech in those type jobs. Because a lot of times people don't understand that if you're a bio-operator coming out without a degree,
Yep.
you're going to be making $50,000 to start.
Which is a very good salary for a high school diploma.
You turn around and say, wow, it's a steady job. It's a clean job.
Yep.
I mean, you look at carpenters, plumbers. They're out in the coldest days freezing and the hottest days sweating to death.
Yeah.
There's no, it's just relentless.
It's an incredibly tough job.
Being in a nice laboratory facility.
Air-conditioned facility, yeah.
It's not too bad. And getting paid good money.
Yeah. And good benefits. Yeah, there's a lot to it. Room for growth, stability in your job. There's a lot to it. So.
Now, you mentioned extra space.
Yeah.
We just funded an expansion at Brookside. Have you had a chance to look at that?
I haven't yet. No, I need to swing by.
Because I'm curious. I've been informed there's 3 bids.
Yes.
And one of them's half the other 2.
I've heard this, yes.
Seems surprising to me.
It gives me pause.
Yes. I mean, I wish it's true and
If
the quality's the same.
If the quality is the same and the criteria is met, it would be a really good deal.
Now, the high school. Renovate or create?
I'm not a structural engineer, and I would certainly listen to them. I think the best plan forward is to renovate, and there's ways to do that that get pretty creative. I've heard different ideas. I think renovate probably makes the most sense. You have to really convince me that a whole new building would be appropriate. The other part of it is, how would you build a new building on that property without interfering day-to-day operations? Because that's a 2 to 3 year project to make a whole new high school. Or do you move it elsewhere, which kind of defeats the purpose of the investment that we're putting into the track and field facility? We're putting $1 million into renovating that. So it really wouldn't make sense to have that off campus of the new high school either.
Well, the only place I can imagine we could build a new school is up on Asylum Street.
Which has its challenges.
I think of
How
all
far is
the
the fire
cars
department
coming
from it?
through the
Yeah.
university streets. That'd be a frightening movie. And then the people down on, I guess what it's called, East Milford, or Medway side of Milford.
Yep.
It's going to take them a week to get through traffic.
Absolutely.
I shouldn't be that
Yeah.
facetious, but it's going to take
At least 5 days.
a long time for those kids to get across town.
Can't do it.
And then you've got that major highway called Route 140.
Yep.
Running buses up and down that.
And you would need to get new zoning for traffic lights, and I think it's too complicated. I really do. I'm not even sure if it's financially better. That's neither here nor there.
I like the idea, and I still believe, building a new wing.
And putting all the classrooms, switching them out, I think that's the best move. There's
Because a new school, well, the pool wouldn't be paid for.
No. Let's keep that as is.
And I'd rather see the money we would spend on a new pool put into a field house.
Yes. And now you're talking. See, I'm a runner. We'll put a track in there. It'll be great.
Well, that's when I used to go with the Special Olympics to places like Shrewsbury.
Sure.
And I saw what the town did for their kids.
Mm-hmm.
It was to die for.
It's amazing. Well, it's funny. Everyone jokes because of the rivers running underneath the youth center. They're like, "Why can't you put the pool there?" And I just kind of, yeah. See, I knew I'd get you on that one. No, the town's really growing, and there's good things with that you have to just plan for. And a field house does make a lot of sense. There's some revenue components to it, but more importantly, you're serving the town, and I think that's the most important.
I don't
thing.
believe you'd ever get revenue out of it because it would be booked so frequently
Yeah,
that you wouldn't have time. But
you get a little bit.
When
yeah.
they talked about renting out the high school football field, soccer field.
Sure.
When is that field not used that you could rent it out?
Pretty frequently. The only thing you could do to maybe increase the frequency would be what they do at Harvard, where they put the bubble inside the stadium for winter. That would be the only way to really increase usage. But I guarantee you, all the high school sports and middle school sports would be using that. And then again, to your point, how much revenue are you going to be making at that point?
So you mentioned the town is growing.
Yeah.
And I used to kid Bob Tremblay and Kevin when he first started about why do you need more space? You're only adding one kid per year.
Yeah, that's not the case anymore.
Not anymore. Now we're adding 200.
At least.
And people don't understand that that's half of Memorial School every year. How do you deal with it?
Yeah, I think the pods that are going in at Brookside are a good short-term solution, and I think we might have to start doing that. At the other schools, while we kind of wait for the high school project to work. Stacy is going to have to be a whole new thing, and I know it's in the back of your mind. After the high school, that's coming right not far along after that. So. It's planning. Milford has done an amazing job, and credit to you because I know you are on the finance committee and you've done this for years of kind of storing away money and being really prudent about preparing for the future. But I think we have to start considering, some stronger actions to prepare for that influx. I'm really curious to see what these new apartments. With the 600 units that are coming in, how much that's going to reduce things.
Initially, I was less concerned
Mm-hmm.
until the paradigm shifted.
Mm-hmm.
When apartments were, I won't say cheap, but relatively affordable.
Sure.
A one-bedroom or a two-bedroom, the standard people always refer to as Laurelwood and Hopedale,
Mm-hmm.
which had 3 kids.
Yeah.
But now, because, and I was corrected at the FinCom last night, said, no, Al, 1,300 is old school. It's 1,800 for an apartment.
Yeah, that's on the cheap end.
Yeah, and you sit there and say, okay, so now you're forcing 2 kids. I wouldn't say forcing, but by necessity.
Yes.
You got mom, dad, and 1 or 2 kids
Mm-hmm.
living in a two-bedroom.
Yeah.
So when you start talking about 600 apartments.
Yeah. And that trickles down quickly, too. I mean, you think about all the other resources that go into it. The water department, there's more usage there because there's more humans living there. Sewer, same thing. Schools, police, fire. It really does add up very quickly. So, we have to kind of meet the needs of what the school committee can do. And I think that involves, preparing all the schools for more space where we can do it appropriately and efficiently. And we have to adapt the best way we can.
Well, I got laughed at when we finished Brookside. And the first thing out of my mouth when somebody said, why are you putting money in stabilization? I said, there's a school coming.
Always a school coming.
But that's it.
Yeah.
You understand. We have 5 major schools in Milford.
Mm-hmm.
They expect 40 to 50-year lifetime
Yep.
before they either need a major reno or a redo.
Sure.
So it's every 8 or 10 years.
Yeah.
The high school is going to be the tough one because at 175 to 200 million estimate,
Yeah.
that's not something that, Woodland we did without raising taxes.
It's amazing. That's actually very impressive.
Brookside, we put away all that money in stabilization
Mm-hmm.
and never ended up touching it. Just left it there
Yeah. That's a good
carried
thing.
it to Woodland.
That's great.
Now the high school at this kind of money, we're going to have to hit the every source of funding we have.
We have to, and I know the state's going to contribute, but not as much as they should, to be blunt. But we're going to have to pick up the slack one way or the other, and that means we have to be very efficient with how we do things, with the building process, with how we think about the strategies of what programs and services we want to offer. So that there's a lot of thinking to it. We can't just get a big wish list and say, well, we're going to spend all this money and get everything. We have to really be efficient on how we spend that money.
A new Rickert family's coming to the area, and they ask you, will my child get a good education in Milford?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%, no doubt. And I think as I've gotten more involved, I can say that very honestly. There are so many programs, there's so many opportunities and services that the Milford schools offer. No matter what background you have, whether you're a native English speaker or not, whether your child has a disability or not, Milford is going to support your child in whatever venture they want to go into, whether it's college. We're getting certainly people getting into the Ivy Leagues and other great schools, or the non-college route of the trades and other professional settings. So without a doubt, you can get a great education here.
What do you have to do to get the best education for your child?
So, I will say part of that is going to be your family life, right? I know we've spoken before about how supportive your family has been, and you have been for your family by attending every event. That makes a huge difference in a child's life, and that's not something that I could do as a school committee member. I can't control those types of things. But what I would encourage parents to do is to be involved as possible. There are resources. There are other things that students can take advantage of. That does take a little bit of advocacy work on the parents' end. From a school committee member perspective, I know the school committee does a great job of it now with information, multiple languages for all events that get sent out. They really try to reach the students where they are at, where their families are at. And we have to continue to do that too. We have to really show the families that we are in their court to support their child in the best way that the schools can. So, it's definitely the responsibility on the parent, but the school committee can always improve upon that.
School choice, have you had a chance to look into that?
Yeah. Everyone has their reasons why. I've talked to parents about why they've had their child choice out of Milford, and they have their reasons, and that's really the good part about being in this state and being in this country, that you can have some freedom of choice to do what you need to do for your family. But on the other side, we have people that choice in too, and from a perspective of do we want to? It's tough. We want everyone who's in Milford to feel like the schools work for them. But they don't, and that's okay. So there's pros and cons to it. I know we do spend money that comes out that we have to pay to other districts, but I will say that there is some savings that we don't have to support as many students in our schools because of it too. So there is a trade-off there. Again, I personally, we personally plan on having our child go through the schools, but that could change too. And we have to just meet where our child is at, and I would encourage all parents to do the same.
It's hard because it's a personal thing.
Of course.
When people leave the center of the universe here for us. But like you say, some children do better in small schools.
Sure.
So you got towns around us that are much smaller.
Yeah.
The immigrant factor.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody likes to talk about it.
Yeah.
But people moving to the area always ask.
Yeah.
If I took you, Brandon, well-educated, smart guy, and said, in a year you're taking a test in Mandarin.
I would fail it.
And you say, well, you didn't do as well as Joe.
Yeah.
Well, Joe grew up speaking Mandarin. I'm learning.
Yeah.
What effect do you think it has?
Yeah. I personally do not like standardized tests, almost completely across the board. they don't, to your point, they don't show someone's intelligence. They show how well you can take a test. And there's plenty of research that supports standardized test scores are directly related to the family's income, which means that they can pay for tutors, they can get extra help to take those tests. Yeah, we have to do it, and the state mandates that. I would love to see changes at the state level in terms of statewide testing. But yeah, to your point, our numbers don't look as good because of that barrier of language. I bet those scores would change quite a bit if there was an opportunity to take it in a different language, or even at a different learning level. I read an article about I forget which state it was. They redid their math standardized test for fifth graders, and the scores went way down, and they couldn't figure out why until they realized that the wording of the problem was at an eighth grade level, giving it to fifth graders. So it wasn't that they didn't know the math, it's that they couldn't comprehend the question that was being asked. So things like that go a long way when it comes to standardized tests, and to your point, the language barrier is one of those many factors.
Well, you brought up the fact that our kids are getting into very good schools.
Yeah.
To me, the ultimate judge of how well McIntyre and crew are doing are the colleges that our kids apply to and their ability to compete when they're in the college.
Absolutely.
And my daughter got into every school she wanted to go to, my oldest.
It's awesome. It's great.
What more could I ask out of the high school?
Yeah.
The youngest one cheated. She only applied to one school.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I knew where I wanted to go, so it was pretty easy for me.
Yeah, she said she wanted to go to Holy Cross, and that was it. It's the only place she's applying. My heart is stopping when I see what grades and all you need to get in.
Yeah.
But she got accepted.
Yeah.
So from that end, I remember asking when my oldest got to middle school East.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Davern ran that place, and Tommy Davern, Paul Raftery, those are the kind of people that you pray we get more of.
Yeah.
Tommy considered every child in middle school East his personal mission. And I remember one day I walked in because the whole brouhaha over MCAS came up,
Mm-hmm.
that Milford was looking so bad compared to other towns.
Sure.
And I remember saying to him, Tommy, why do your MCAS scores suck? I knew I'd get a reaction because I'm attacking his kids.
Sure.
And I remember he just didn't blink. He looked at me and says, because you're ignorant. And I said, okay, enlighten me.
Sure.
And he showed me the results that Milford had a very bimodal distribution. Mm-hmm. He says, look, I'll put our top kids against any town around
Absolutely.
us. He says, but it's just you got a group of kids who don't understand the language yet.
Yeah.
And they're taking these tests. And they suffer. So when you aggregate the numbers, it doesn't look as good.
Doesn't look as good.
Now, we've been lucky
Mm-hmm.
the last 2 years. 2 years ago when the school committee came and said, because of all the new kids, we need $6 million extra dollars.
Yeah.
There's no doubt we're going to get it, but it's like gulp. What do we have to do?
Sure.
And the state came up with the student opportunity
They've
program.
We changed it. Yeah.
And we got $7 extra million.
Yep.
If you had the choice, where would you spend that kind of money?
Yeah, and again, I know the school committee is asking for another $6 or $7 million again this year, and hopefully the state delivers again. Yeah, when you're talking about trying to enhance programs, I think it's going to really have to be dictated by those in the school. So the principals know their schools the best, the assistant principals. So I would look to them as to where their initial thoughts are. As to what's needed in terms of a good quality education. Me personally, like I said before, I really want to see new opportunities for what the economy allows for today. My brother is a principal, middle school principal in Connecticut, and last year he got a $50,000 grant to add esports to his school. So video games. And this year they are national champions in esports. And they had to pay for all the high-speed internet, all these fun things. But that is an economy now that you can get a scholarship for to college and also make a
You
living.
can get a scholarship for playing video games?
I kid you not, Al. The world has changed. So that's why
I grew up with stone tablets.
I'm not too much far behind you. I mean, my video game is certainly a little bit different than what's out today. But that's what I mean when I say that we need to really think about our education system. And I'm not saying we need to have more video games as part of the curriculum during those 7 hours that you mentioned, those 7 or 8 hours. But the after-school activities, I think, is where kids can absolutely grow into what their interests are and make that into their future careers. So I think the after-school programming is probably going to be one of the bigger areas that I would focus on as to what we would want to grow.
A big part of our budget is SPED.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when I use the term SPED, people immediately focus on one part of SPED.
Sure.
To me, special needs includes the top 10%,
Mm-hmm.
the average kids,
Sure.
and the kids who need a little help to get to average.
Of course.
How do you think we do taking care of our special needs populations?
I will tell you how we do, and it's a really good comparison. The town next to us, Hopkinton, is actually cutting their special education program, or proposing to cut their special education program in terms of funding. We always increase ours. We are known for ours. If you talk to parents from other towns, they know that we are setting the bar, not meeting the bar. We are setting it. And to your point, there's lots of different needs across all ranges. You have a lot of high-performing kids who might have a personality disorder, and special education also is going to include English as a second language. It's there is need there, so we do a great job. And if you look at what other towns are doing, it's incredibly hard to fund. You need a lot of resources to do it well, and we do.
It's always the question, the way we fund our special needs programs, people come from other towns.
Yes. Yeah.
So we end up with a disproportionate percentage. And, I mean, it's been thrown in our face at the FinCom that by funding this, you're asking people to come to Milford. What would you say to that?
Well, by funding it, you're doing the right thing. I mean, that's what I would say to it. Every child in this school district deserves a quality education. Period. End of sentence. There's nothing more to be said about that. How we have to do that is a choice in budget and choice in resources, choice in how we do things, and that's where the school committee can certainly play an influence. But that is the best compliment we could possibly receive, is that people want to come to our town because we provide a quality education.
I can only hope that someday when I'm in front of those pearly gates that I don't get handed suntan lotion and sent south, but that the worst thing that's thrown at me is you were too easy on the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because you have a 2-month-old.
Yeah.
Is there anything more sacred?
Nothing, not a single thing. It's a new perspective that I have now, and I've always known that kids are important, but there's nothing better in the world seeing her smile and just listening to her make whatever noises she wants to make. And children are sacred. They deserve our absolute best.
And it only gets better.
Yeah.
You know, here I am.
I believe that. I 100%
Here I am with a 35-year-old and a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
And it's only gotten better. I mean, there's been the times when it was a little challenging.
Sure.
But overall, I can't imagine anything more wonderful.
The best things in life require some work and some challenges in adversity. So I'm looking forward to all that.
If you had you were the king with the magic wand, and you could add a program to the schools, any idea what you'd add?
I think a very robust technology program. And what do I mean by that? I coached a kid when I was coaching high school cross country and track. Absolutely brilliant. He actually hacked the school system in a positive way to create a calendar for everyone's schedule into an app. He got in a little bit of trouble, but they realized what he did was actually really good, so they didn't scold him too badly. Anyways, he went to one semester at Stanford and dropped out and has been working at SpaceX for the past, I guess, 7 or 8 years now. He still does not have a bachelor's degree, and he is working literally on rockets. He is a rocket scientist. So how do we find those kids that may not be someone like me who didn't like being in the classroom but could learn in different ways with hands-on learning? And I think there's opportunities there. The $500,000 that you mentioned for the sciences related to biomed, I think is a great way to get people to understand how their basic biology classes apply to the real world. And I think that's where the light bulbs kind of start going off for
And that was
learners.
an absolute example of Milford taking care of its kids.
Yes.
Because we walked into the C Wing, looked around and said, wow, this looks just like it did when I was here 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And we went and asked.
Yep.
And the science teachers were very candid in saying we haven't had the funding.
Yeah.
Because the technology today for our kids to compete, the technology is very expensive.
Super expensive.
Within a year and a half, a program was put into place that we took $250,000 out of each surplus.
Yep.
Tucked it away till we had the money we needed, and they put in all new equipment. The deal was you can't build anything like desks, and because we're going to do a new high school.
Yeah.
But all the microscopes that were when Paul Revere installed them, cool. But I felt so proud that night that the townspeople of Milford, and a lot of them don't have kids anymore, but they all voted. And the money got allocated, and now our kids are working on absolute state-of-the-art equipment.
Yeah, and I think that's actually an opportunity within itself. The high school I went to, Danbury, there was a program for seniors where we actually had 3 blocks blocked off, and we were able to go to the hospital for whoever wanted to be in the allied health profession, 3 times a week, and be hands-on. Most were nurses, but I was with the physical therapists, and I think there's a case for that. I know Rensselaer is putting on a massive addition. I know Waters has been a staple in this town. Maybe there's an opportunity that we can, instead of trying to fund everything within our own spaces, use their equipment that they already have. They get some benefit out of it because they're probably going to get some relatively cheap labor out of it. But the students get a really great learning opportunity. So there's relationships that we can build within town and get really creative on how we do that. So it's just really building that brand that we want to be as an educational system.
I'm coming to Milford. I'm going to put my kids in the school system. Are they safe?
Yeah, they're safe. So there's resource officers in the schools. There's the SWAT team, the SWAT program that we have, that certainly is protective in the event of a terrible, hopefully never something that happens here, incident. The schools are safe, but I will say, with that being said, and we've harped on the high school quite a bit. What was it, last week? There was a pretty significant malfunction of the fire alarm system. No one was in danger, but it does go to show that when we're applying with the state for the funding that we desperately need for that high school, that it is starting to become a really pressing issue. The short answer is your kids are absolutely safe.
Now, how do you deal with the parents who get nervous of having armed policemen? We say SWAT.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when the argument came up for SWAT. I looked over, Chris Moran was chairman at the time, and I said, God help us if we vote against this.
Something happens.
And something happens. How could you look at any parent and say, I saved $600,000, but I'm sorry you lost your children?
Yeah, I mean, you can't put a price on a life.
But there are people, I've been very proud of the fact that we've had 2 demonstrations regarding the police of Milford, both positive.
Yeah.
And people stood out in the rain to show their appreciation at the first one.
Yeah.
But there are people who are nervous about having armed policemen in the schools.
I think it's a valid concern, but Milford, like everything that Milford does, we do fairly well. We have high standards for the officers that we hire. We have training, including the $600,000 for the SWAT team and response team. Um, you know, the police are truly there to protect the kids. They're not going around, looking at kids saying, "Oh, tie your shoe." They're not looking at minor little offenses here. They are truly there for the safety of the students, the teachers, the staff that are in those buildings. So, I think I would say to those parents, if you have a specific concern, I'd be happy to listen to you and see if we can maybe address something that maybe I'm missing, maybe that I would be turning a blind eye to. But I feel very confident being in the building when I'm there. And I certainly feel confident sending my daughter there when she's ready to go, to all the schools.
Well, that's the biggest vote of confidence.
Yeah.
Is when you choose to send your children
Of course.
into the school system.
Absolutely.
Do you think there's a positive effect of kids growing up dealing with the resource officers that they have in school?
Yeah, I think there is. There can be, right? You get to interact with a resource officer who, again, they are trained to interact with students, with kids. They joke around a little bit more. They will hop in on a basketball game impromptu and shoot some hoops and things like that. And at the youth center, we have that happen all the time. We have officers who come in during the after school program to purposely interact with kids and say, "Hey, we are here to serve you. We're here to protect you. We want to get to know you. We want to show you that we too are humans, just like yourself." So I think it helps bridge a lot of community gaps. Other communities certainly have different issues. Milford, fortunately, does not, and that's a testament to the people that are in place from top to bottom who are committed to everyone's safety. So I think it's great, and I'm glad that we have a really great police force that we can trust with our children.
I think we're very fortunate because my inherited son, because he's part of my family now, is an African-American man now.
Sure.
One night he was over, we went down to Craft Roots, and my neighbor was there, so we sat down for an hour just having a beer, talking.
Sure.
When Tom and his wife left,
Yeah.
Chris looked at me and said, "This is incredible." And I said, "What?" He goes, "That's the police chief." I said, "Yeah, it's my neighbor Tom."
Yeah.
He goes, "But he just sat with us." I said, "Yeah, what do you think you do with neighbors?" He said, "No, you don't he goes, "You don't understand. Where he came from in Virginia,
It's different.
a young black man," he says, "you would never think you could just sit and hang with the police chief."
Sure.
And it's just something that we take for granted.
We do. I try to be very conscious of that, right? And to your point, like you said, if someone's coming from somewhere else, they may have had a different experience with the police, unfortunately. But again, I think our department has shown time and time again that they are true professionals. I hope they continue to do that. I have every confidence that they will. But to your point, yeah, I mean, we are in a little bubble here, and I guess that's what happens when you're in the center of the universe, as you put it. But we are very fortunate in a lot of things that Milford has to offer this community.
What effect do you think the increasing immigrant population has on our school system?
It's a stress. It's a stress for everyone. There's more resources across the board when you add more people. And then when you add people who may not speak the language, who have different socioeconomic backgrounds as well, it adds a lot of things to think about. I'm taking that from the negative. There's a whole positive side of it too. When you have more cultures around you, you are a better person because of it. You're going to learn about traditions and customs that you never would have been exposed to. Hopefully, you get to try some different foods that you never really would have, because there are other cultures that have pretty good food too. So you should try that. But more importantly, you just learn how to be a human as part of this little blue rock that spins around the sun. And I think that's something that is a huge advantage for being in Milford. And like I said, Milford reminds me of my hometown with the diversity, with the high immigrant population. And I firmly believe my trajectory was shaped because of those positive experiences.
It's funny because I just thought of when we were growing up, Milford had its own little sections.
Yeah.
The Heights was mainly Portuguese. It was mainly Portuguese up in the Heights. Luby Ave, the Plains were Italian. You had your little sections and the rivalries.
Sure.
The Larches at the top of Water Street was the great unification center. Because we'd go to Hopedale to the band concerts, and when you hit the top of that
Sure.
peak and you're going into Hopedale,
Yep.
all of a sudden you turned your hat around, and we were all the same. The kids from Luby Ave,
Yeah.
the kids from the Plains.
Sure.
If we went down to the Hopedale band concert and anybody picked on them, well, wait a minute, they're us.
Yeah, they're Milfordians.
After the band concert, we come back up the hill. Okay, back to your side of the
Right.
town.
Yeah.
But it was wild that diversity was always something towns talked about. We were too busy living
it. Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And even just neighborhoods now, I don't personally see as much of that, communities that are, in their specific areas in town as much, at least from my point of view. But, I think in general.
No, but you're
Yeah.
right, because, again, when Paul Revere and I played baseball, when we grew up, you got home to the Heights.
Yeah.
You grabbed your ball, your glove, and your bat, and you went out in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
There was, until 8th grade, there was no real organized sports that you went to every night. I mean, when my daughters grew up, there was soccer, there was cheerleading.
Sure.
We were driving them around town every night.
And it's getting worse.
And, all of a sudden, you sit there and say, it's a nice thing because you didn't have the rivalries of us against Luby Ave, of us against the Plains. And again, I always thought it was kind of funny because the minute we went to Hopedale, it was like your cousins. They're family.
Sure.
Now, when they're home, you argue.
Of course.
But the minute you step out of the house, nobody touches my cousin.
Not at all.
Sports-wise, how do you feel about the sports offerings in Milford?
I think they're pretty robust. The Milford wrestling program, I think they're still undefeated. If not, they've had a fantastic season. I do follow the track teams a little bit more, and they're very good. They have some incredibly strong individuals. The football team had a great season. Girls soccer certainly has had some good performances. So, we offer quite a bit. I can't imagine another sport that we would add. I think it's pretty rare to have a swim team. It's even more rare to have your own pool. So that's a huge resource that we have. I think we just have to focus on what we currently offer, and making sure that they are adequately funded and appropriated for. So making sure that they have enough coaches. The other thing too, and we saw it unfortunately played out well a couple months ago with Damar Hamlin in the NFL. Having athletic trainers right there, that's a huge part of sports, is having safety personnel that can respond to a serious injury. And, that's something that needs to be addressed, I think with different things that we can do, like having more accessible AEDs at playing fields. And that's something that I would want to focus on of, are we doing all the right things, in terms of safety from a physical perspective. But, sports programs, they're great here, and we want to keep on supporting them. I excelled in school because there were sports. I can get my energy out. I can be more focused and be more dedicated. So, I think it's a great thing anything that we can offer.
Well, the first time I met our new
Mhm.
AD, I was amazed because I asked him about the program.
Sure.
And the pride that he showed talking about his student athletes
Yeah.
sold me right there. The fact that here's the head of sports,
Talking about student first.
student athletes,
Yeah.
and how when they're wearing the Milford colors,
Yeah.
whether they're on the field, on the court, on the track, or not, he tells the kids, you're representing your town.
Yeah.
I just sat there and said, this guy's got his head screwed on straight. You know?
He's a good guy. I like him a lot. He's proud. He's very proud of his athletes. He has a very active Twitter account, and he's always posting, athlete of the week and big performances. And
But the perspective was there because he started walking me through the percentages, and all I heard was small, tiny, negligible. When you started talking about how many of our student athletes are going to make a living at sports.
out of every class, you might get one. You might get one.
And yet you have 300 others
Yeah.
who have to make a living doing something.
Yes.
So the fact that he keeps it in perspective.
Yeah.
And, a lot of it, too, people forget that we're a blue-collar town.
We are.
We've been very lucky that a lot of our residents do well.
Mhm.
But a lot of people need some help. I remember when I was coaching soccer, I had a young lady who, you could see the difference in her play when her dad showed up at the game.
Yeah.
The games he wasn't there, she was good. The games he was there, she was incredible.
Yeah.
And I walked up to him, and I said, this was in Portuguese, I said, you must be doing really well financially. And he looked at me and said, you must be rich. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, watch your daughter. When you're here, she's college material.
Yeah.
She could get a scholarship. Now, back then it was $25,000 a year. I said,
A little bit different. Yeah.
you don't care about $100,000 of expenses? Must be very wealthy to do that. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, your daughter, if she plays the way she plays when you're here, could get a scholarship.
Yeah.
And that means you don't have to pay for college.
Big difference.
He showed up at every game. And it was amazing because it just never thought of it.
Yeah. That's the great thing about sports, right? It can transform your trajectory of life in many different ways. You can gain a lot from the experience, whether you do get a scholarship or not. But either way, I think it's an important part of our culture. It's an important part of the learning experience, and I'm happy that our town does a really good job of supporting it.
Yeah, even if you don't play in college,
It's still a great experience.
the rigor, the discipline, whatever you call it,
Skills, life skills.
life skills. Coach Pete really drills into you
Yeah.
characteristics that you'll carry forward.
Yeah, it's important, and that goes back to making sure the coaches are well supported, and everyone in between that interacts with the athletes.
Well, I've always been amazed because to this day, I'm in awe of town meeting more and more every year. Because
I am too, but it may not be positive.
it's just, whenever people have gone in front of town meeting,
Sure.
I've never seen the town meeting turn its back on kids.
Never.
And some of the decisions, the money, you're like looking at each other saying, we're going to get the money for this.
Sure.
But if it comes down to kids, Milford takes care of its own.
We do.
Last question.
Yeah.
Brendan, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Yeah, Al, back to the beginning, it's just simple. I've learned a lot from 3 years ago, and I've put in the time to learn from the people that have come before me in these roles, the people that are currently serving in this role, and talk to everyone involved in the process, from administrators to the students themselves. I wanted to show the town that, running for office wasn't a vanity exercise. It wasn't, something for me. It was for the betterment of this community. And that's why I'm back. I'm running again 3 years now from the original time. I'm dedicated to the process. I want to see the high school through. I want to see, the great things that this community can produce through our school system, and be one small part of that wheel, and what the school committee can do. And I believe that I have the knowledge and the relationships to be successful in this role. So I hope to earn your vote.
Well, I'm impressed that you didn't let 3 years go by,
No.
that you got involved with the youths down at the youth center, that you've been involved with.
That is the best thing Milford's ever done. I will undoubtedly say that. That program has been more successful than anyone could ever imagined.
You had to be there back in the early 70s when it was the Armory.
Yeah.
We would go down from the Heights. We'd go down and play ball hockey every
Sure.
Monday night.
Yeah.
Freezing, and the floor was...
Warped. Yeah. Now we're putting in air conditioning. So that's how far it's come.
Well, for the credit of the current board,
Yeah.
originally it was hard to get funding for the youth center because it was targeted. I mean, I was told point blank that my kids were not welcome
No.
because they're not at risk.
It's not.
And-
We don't believe that.
And it was like, wait a minute. First of all, I hate the idea you'd put a label on any Milford kid.
Agreed.
But who are you to decide who gets to use town resources?
Totally agree.
When this board came back, new board, and said every child is welcome. Okay, now you got my attention.
Yep.
And realistically, the programs, I remember when special needs didn't have enough basketball time or court time.
They use the center. Yeah.
And Jen Ward said, we will find time for them.
Yep. We'll open up the doors. No
And
questions
somehow
asked.
free court time was magically available because they were for Milford kids. So that whole program just amazes me.
Best thing in the world. Yeah, and there's we're expecting 300 plus kids in March for the after school program. So what a great way to serve the community.
And you got the whole summer program.
Yep, and then we're applying for a $200,000 grant to help support the staff for that, to lower the cost for families. Jen does a great job. I'm just a facilitator for some of the administrative things for her. Her and her team do an amazing job.
Well, again, I thank you for stepping up and being one of those people who says, put me in, coach. I can make a difference.
Absolutely.
And to our 6 loyal viewers, thank you for joining us. I'll never ask you to vote for a specific candidate, no matter how strongly I feel about them. But I'll beg you to vote. Get to know the candidates, because especially the school committee candidates, because they will control 7 hours a day of your child's life and have a lasting impression as they go forward. And as always, may God bless. May tomorrow be a better day than today. And to our 6 loyal viewers, thanks for joining us.